got a last minute update. I got an update that said, hey, we forgot to tell you that we're doing another stream at the top of the hour. So can you reschedule yours? So I was like, either push it later or make it earlier. Earlier was what worked. So for those of you who are like, why is this early? The graphic says 1 p.m. Pacific. You're now at 12:30. That's why. I apologize for that. We tend to not let those things happen, but sometimes they happen. So with that said, we're going to do the best of it. And for those of you who don't get to watch it because you were waiting for 4 p.m. or 1 p.m. Pacific, you will get to watch the replay. So with that said, I'm sorry you didn't get to see it live. But welcome and Happy New Year, everybody. Oi is right. All right, so with that said, what are we going to do today? We're going to take a look at my favorite features introduced in 2018 for Creative Cloud. Now, I won't get a chance to talk about everything. I won't get a chance to talk about every app. I won't get a chance to talk about every feature. There's more that I like than I'll get time for, but now I'm really on a time crunch because I got to be done at the top of the hour for the next stream. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into it. And for those of you who are new, my name is Terry White. I'm the worldwide design and photography evangelist here at Adobe. It's my pleasure to be streaming to you live with my first stream of the year. I do these usually Monday through Thursday. You can always check my schedule at terrywhite.com for when my next one is going to be. I tend to post my schedule each Monday. I try to anyway. And I did do it for this Monday. So today, as a matter of fact. So you can go to terrywhite.com and see when the next stream is going to be. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump over and let's go ahead and take a look. Without further ado, I'm going to start in Photoshop because that's where all good things start. I'm going to start in Photoshop, talk about some of my favorite new features that were introduced in 2018. Then we'll jump over to Illustrator, jump over to InDesign, and wrap it up by the top of the hour, one way or the other. So let's start with something that I had to go back and look. I could not believe that it just came out in 2018. I thought I'd been using this feature for years, but it turns out one of my favorite new features, which is Select Subject, just came out in January. So it's only a year old. It came out in January 2018. So how does Select Subject work? Well, if I wanted to select this, get the right mouse here. If I wanted to select this bear in the past, I would have gone to Quick Select and I would have probably made my brush a little bit bigger. But I would have gone to Quick Select and I would have started making a selection like that until I got it all. And of course, you miss little pieces and you have to keep going back and forth. Let's deselect because now with the Adobe Sensei powered Select Subject, it automatically creates a selection of the most prominent subject, which in this case should be the bear. So with one click, it got 100% of the bear. Now I got a couple things I didn't want, like there's some few edges here that it did not get. And of course I don't need this part between the leg. So I just hold down the Option key and Alt or Option click to deselect that, and I got my subject. You will find that Select Subject will be faster than manual selecting 99% of the time. So with that said, Select Subject out of the way, one of my favorite new things. Now, what got enhanced in the last year is a feature that's not new, but it did get some enhancements, and that is Select and Mask. So that's the second part of this. When your subject is doesn't have any hair or fur, or it does have hair and fur, you need to go to Select and Mask. When I do that, it will do a decent selection. You may need to use the Refine Edge brush, or Refine Edge tool, which if it got a little too much of that background, you can go ahead and tone it down and get some of that just brushing it away on the edges. And I could go ahead and, of course, brush the whole thing, but for the sake of time, we're just going to say that that's going to be good enough for this. And I want to make sure that I'm going to output this to a new layer with a layer mask. So I'm just going to click OK. And it did just that. So now we get to see the layer that was behind it around the mask. Now, there's the mask. So if I were to shift click, you can turn it off. If I were to option click, you can see what mask it created. Did a great job around the hair and the fur. And now I'm going to use that mask to actually cut out the background. So I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key, drag it to the background, because that will help me or enable me to show my next favorite new feature. So Quick Select, which became Select Subject, and of course Select and Mask enhancements, my third new favorite feature is the ability to do live blending mode. So I want to be able to see the trees or forest through the bear. I don't know necessarily which blending mode is going to work best. So instead of me having to click through each one by one, I go to my blending modes and just hover, and it will show me what they look like without me selecting. So I think the one that looks best on this is screen. I'm going to go down to screen, just click it one time, and just dragging up and down, hovering over your blending modes, live blend modes in Photoshop. Definitely a favorite new feature. All right, and if this looks familiar, this is the stuff I showed at Adobe Max, which is still my favorite new stuff. All right, so with that said, another little enhancement. These are some little ones I'm going to show now. You always had to go to your type tool if you wanted to change text, find the type tool, highlight the text. Just a simple double click will select the text now. That may seem like a little bitty thing, but it's something you're going to do every time now. You want to select text, double click, select it. I can now make any changes I want. And more importantly, I used to have to hit the enter key or click the check mark. Now I can just click away and it will auto commit. So double click to edit the text or select the text, click away from it to auto commit. Little things that will go a long way in Photoshop. Now this big one caused a little controversy. I like it. It's one of my favorite new features. Some people hate change and I don't know what to tell you. But when you want to free transform things, like I select that layer and hit Command. Oh, where's my free transform? I want to free transform. All right, let's try it on something else. Why am I am hitting free transform. I don't know why my free transform is not working on it. Let's go to something else. We'll do it on this. As a matter of fact, that'll help me do 3 features at once. So I'll do the next one now. So let's go in and let's say that I want to fill this last area with a image. So here's the image that I want to use. In the past, I would have to drag it over, and then I would have to figure out how to scale it. And here's what I was talking about, scaling without holding down the shift key. So free transform is now proportional by default. So if you wanted to stretch it, you would hold down the shift key, but most people, most of the time, don't want to stretch. But even if I get that scale down and get it to fit that space, I would still have to figure out how to mask it. So let's get to my next new feature. I'm just going to get out of that and go to the brand new frame tool. So with the frame tool, I can just go ahead and drag out a frame to be the exact area that I want to fill. And now when I drag an image into that frame, it will do 2 things for me. It will perfectly scale the image down to fit the frame, and it will mask off any excess area. And of course, I can still, if I go to my move tool, I can still move things around within the frame itself or move the frame. And you can select between the frame and the layer, or the frame and the object in the layers panel. All right, so with that said, next up, frames are not just limited to rectangles. So here I've got an example of a frame that was converted from text. So I can just drag over my musical notes into the text. So just type your text, right click on the text layer, convert to frame, and your text layer becomes a frame. Your text layer becomes a frame. And same thing here, if I want to drag this over into an elliptical frame that was drawn with the frame tool, no problem. And this last one is actually a vector shape that I got from Adobe Stock, the guitar itself. So I can drag a physical photograph of a guitar into the vector guitar to make it into a vector frame. So those are just a few of my favorite things in Photoshop. I could go on and on and on and on about Photoshop, but we got 20 minutes left, so let's jump right into Illustrator. Now, the first thing I want to show in Illustrator is kind of one of those things that if you are the kind of person that plans ahead, this won't be a big deal to you. But if you're the kind of person that doesn't plan ahead and doesn't use symbols, this could be a lifesaver. All right, so for example, you can see that the cat eye logo, or the cat eye itself, has been placed all over this design. It's been placed and scaled, it's been placed and rotated, it's been placed everywhere on every artboard that it needs to be placed. But if someone said, hey, can you change the color of the eye itself, the iris or the pupil, to not be white, then that would, in the past, would have meant you'd have to go back, and if you didn't use a symbol, you'd have to go back and select. So here's a question. Can a text frame get a background too? The text frame will have whatever's in it. So I don't know if that, I hope that answers it. If you put a background in it, then it's got a background, but it can't have two things in it, I guess is the answer. All right, but anyway, back to the eye. So in the past, I would have to select each eye individually and go change the color if I didn't use a symbol. So I didn't use a symbol on this, and I can go in and select one eye, and I can go over to the brand new Properties panel, and in the Properties panel, there's a new button called Start Global Edit. So global edits means that if I now start a global edit and I make any change to that one eye, like changing the color, it finds all the existing examples of that eye, or instances of that eye is what I'm trying to say, and it makes the change. So if I want to change it to red eyes, yellow eyes, orange eyes, no problem. So that is starting a global edit. Just make a selection of the one thing that's been duplicated. I use the direct selection because I just wanted part of it. Started the global edit. It said, okay, I know where that exists all over your document. I'm going to go ahead and make that change for you with one click. That is definitely a huge time saver for Illustrator users. All right, next up, let's go in and take a look at this one. Now, if you're a fan of gradients and you found gradients to be hard to use using gradient mesh, then you're going to love this. If you're a fan of gradients, you're a master at gradient mesh, you already know everything you're doing, then this may not be a big deal. But for beginners, this is huge. So for example, let's say that I want to use my direct selection tool and select part of this, this bird's wing. Of course, it made the selection of the path, and of course I could now fill that path with whatever I want. One of the things I can fill that path with, if I go to my gradient tool, there we go. Yep, it's even giving me the heads up of, hey, we got freeform gradients now. And it will show me the three types of gradient. Linear, been there for years, been there since day one. Radial, been there since day one. And the third one in the Properties panel is freeform gradient. So make your selection, click on the gradient tool, go over to the Properties panel and click freeform gradient. Now when you click freeform gradient, it will plot the first point, and you can move that point around, which won't do a whole lot when you only have one. You could change the color of that point to anything you want, but you can also go in and put down additional points. And when you put down additional points and change their colors, you will get blends that interact, or gradients, I should say, that interact with each other based on their proximity to each other. So as I move that around, if I go click another one and make that one a slightly different color, then I will get that smooth transition between them and that look that's so easy to do because I can just move these around. If I want the orange to be at the bottom, move the orange to the bottom, move the pink in the middle. So much easier and faster for me than trying to do something like that with gradient mesh, especially if you want to change your mind. If you want to change your mind and say, in a gradient mesh, you'd have to go click on all the points, change all the colors, so forth and so on. Here, it's just a matter of, oh, I changed my mind. The pink should be at the top. Move the pink up to the top. Move the pink up to the top and leave it there. Move the yellow to the middle. And you can also control how much by making the point bigger or smaller. And if you don't want to work with points, or you want to work with points and lines, just click on lines and you get something like the curvature pen tool directly inside of your object. So I'm just clicking along and it's making these points. And of course, these points can be changed to whatever color they should be as well. So if I go to that one and change that one to maybe that color, oh, maybe something different. There we go. And last but not least, this one, let's see, I used orange already, so let's go back to the pink. You can just really get some cool looking gradients thanks to the new freeform gradients inside of Illustrator CC. So again, there's more things. As a matter of fact, one of the things I won't get a chance to show, but just to talk about it, you can now import multiple page PDFs as of March 2018. So in March, if you wanted to bring in a PDF and edit it and it was multiple pages, easy to do now. All right, so again, for the sake of time, we're going to move on, but there's more things in Illustrator. There's more things in Photoshop. Let's move on to InDesign. So in InDesign, I got a multiple page layout here. We'll zoom out so you can see it. So there's, I don't know, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 pages or so. And with that said, I'm going to zoom in, scroll down, and I'm gonna cheat. We're gonna talk about two things at once. So I'm gonna use InDesign as my basis to talk about these two things. Number one, let's say that your client says, hey, I know we're doing this whole black and white theme, but I want to replace this photo with one with a little more color into it. Well, I got that from Adobe Stock. So I could go to my CC libraries, which are somewhere here. There they are. And you could right click on that image that you got from Adobe Stock, and you could say find similar. You can do that right inside your applications. You can do that right inside Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Premiere Pro, so forth and so on. And it would go out to Adobe Stock and find images that look like that. That's great. But the website for Adobe Stock does so much more than what we can do in the panel. The panel's great. The panel, I find images, buy images, place for position-only images, place images that I haven't bought yet. It's great for all of that stuff. But when I'm really trying to narrow down the search, that's when the website comes in even handier. So if you go to stock.adobe.com, I could search for audience with people raising their hands or whatever and hope to find the image I'm looking for. Or I can do the same kind of find similar. There's a picture of a camera here. I'm going to click on it, and then that lets me drag and drop an image that I'm looking for, something similar on Adobe Stock to what I already have. So let me go find that image on my computer. There it is. So this is the, oh, didn't mean to change the name of it. Here's the name. Here it is. That's the same image. Drag and drop it into the web browser. And when I drag and drop it into the web browser, it will go out to Adobe Stock and find images that are similar. Great. It did what it was supposed to do. It did the same thing the panel would have done. Here's where the website does more. Because when the Stock team introduces new features, they introduce them on the website first. Thanks for the applause, Alan. They introduce them on the website first before they implement them into the panel. So some of the features come in as a beta, like this one, composition beta. So that means find images that may not look exactly the same, but share the same composition. That's key. Because especially if you're trying to fit, let's say the hands were raised on the left side of the photo and you're trying to fit that same kind of theme into your image or your design, then that would be important. So I'm going to say, I'm going to use the composition beta, and it will then narrow the search down to ones that match or have similar composition. Again, they may not be the exact same kind of image, but as you can see, it's the same kind of composition throughout the photos. And some will match better than others, as they always do. Now, the next thing is you can really narrow it down when you start to use the filters. So when I use the filters, I can search for ones that are specific prices, ones that are photos, illustrations, or vectors, or whatever, or videos, if you're looking for videos. I can hide editorial content, which is what I'm doing. I can find images that are only horizontal, or only vertical, or only square, or only panoramic. I can find images that have copy space, because maybe I want to put type right on the image. I can find images that include people or don't have people. So if you're looking for images that have people in them, this is great. If you're looking for images that don't have people in them, this is great. Here's one of my favorite ones that often gets overlooked. I'm trying to match the color of my design. So I want to find images that are matching not just the composition, not just the theme, not just the look, but also the color. So if I click on this, I've already remembered my last search, but you could search any color in the spectrum. You could type in your hexadecimal value, which I'm going to do. So there's the color I'm looking for. And now when I click away, it will redefine the search to find similar composition, but using that color. So here's one that I already licensed, so we're not going to do that one again. Here's one that I kind of like. So I can say, go ahead and put this one in my, Here, let's pop that up. Let's go ahead and put this in my, actually, I'm going to go ahead and license it, but let's put it in the, I saved it to my Adobe Live library and I licensed it. Okay, so I just got to go switch to that library when I get back to InDesign. No problem. We'll switch back to that library. And there's the image. It's already brought it in. It's got the blue check mark, which means I've licensed it already. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag that image over. And I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key to replace the one that was there. And you'll notice that it placed it basically using a typical fill frame proportionally. So it filled the frame, placed it. It may not be the best position, which means that you could always move things around and get them in a better position or get them positioned the way you want. What if you didn't have to do that anymore? For example, here, let's drag this one over. This is the one I did before. And let's pull that one over. And you notice how the little boy or person's hand is cut off on the right-hand side. Because the computer just said, oh, I'm just going to drop this in the frame the way you want, you know, the middle, not the way you want. I'm just going to drop it in the middle, fill the frame proportionally. But what if it could intelligently identify what the image was? So let's go ahead and select that frame. Let's go to my properties panel, which I never know where my properties panel is in InDesign. If I don't see it, I will go choose it from the menu. Let's go do it from the menu because I don't see it right off the bat. There it is, properties, and here it is. Okay, so I got my properties panel up, and what I want to do is I want to use the brand new content-aware fit. So that means using Adobe Sensei, it will figure out what the subject is. And by the way, you can do this frame by frame, which I don't know why you would. Or you can go into preferences and turn it on. So that way, every new InDesign document you create will automatically do this. So when I click on Content Aware Fit, it will automatically figure out what the content is in the image. Don't cut off any important parts and make the images fit better. And again, if you turn that on for your preferences, that means every new frame you create will just automatically do the right thing for your content. You could always override it to be different or weird or special or whatever. But this way, it will just do it automatically. All right, now speaking of the properties panel, which is also new in InDesign. And by the way, another thing I won't get a chance to talk about, but this PDF comments feature, very cool. I'm going to talk about this more tomorrow on the InDesign stream. But being able to import PDF comments, a huge new feature in InDesign. But anyway, back to this properties. So let's zoom out a little bit more, and let's say now you got this all done. And your client says, oh, you know what? That's great for print, but we're also going to put this on our website, and people like to read documents on their computers wide, not tall. Well, no problem. You could always go into InDesign. You could always go into the document setup, and you could always just flip it. No. Don't do it that way. Do it the old way. You could always flip a document wide or tall, but then you would have to manually go in and fix everything, touch every single page, every single element, and move everything around in the order it should be in. I'm going to undo that because there's a better way. Now, it hinted at it. It tried to warn me when I was in document setup. So whether you do this in document setup, there is a adjust layout feature that's brand new of 2018, or whether you do it on the properties panel, there should be an adjust layout. There it is, an adjust layout button on the properties panel. Either place doesn't matter. But when you go to adjust layout, you get that same kind of what do you want to change, the size or the orientation. And when I change the orientation using adjust layout now and click OK, it will automatically figure out what everything should look like and move it around for me. So it's done. 90 to 100% of the work for me that I don't have to go and touch every single thing on every single page. Now, I do warn you, just because it did that doesn't mean you can just go and export it for your publish online. You should go check every page to make sure that everything moved in a good way. But it's doing a whole lot of the work for you that you used to have to do manually. So if I were to zoom in on this now, Yep, that looks good. And I would just go through and scroll through and make sure that everything landed in a good spot, which in this case it did. But if it didn't, you will have to move around a little bit, but at least it did most of that work for you. All right, so with that said, we got 4 minutes left. I am out of new feature. Oh, I was wrong. I got one more new feature, visual font browsing. All right, let's do this. One last thing. Now, this new feature I'm going to show you is not only new in InDesign, it's also new in Illustrator. So I could show it in either place. So you select something and you go to your font browser inside of the properties panel or up on the control panel, and you get this brand new one. And this one's really cool. It lets you filter, first of all, just like the website now. So if I'm looking for a sans serif font, show me all my sans serif fonts, show me all my thick ones or fat ones, so forth and so on, or clear all. That's cool. But, and of course you can show your favorites. Show me the ones I've marked as favorites. That's cool. But, and more importantly, it also shows you the selected text. So whatever I highlighted the word emerge, it's showing me the word emerge in all of the fonts that are here. The biggest new thing about the visual font browsing is this little checkmark cloud thing. Right now it's saying, show me the activated fonts. Great. That means show me the ones that I've gotten as part of my Creative Cloud, which used to be called Typekit. Now they're called Adobe Fonts. But if I say find more, that will go out to Creative Cloud and show me every single font I have access to, whether I've synced it or not. And then it will show me the word emerge in all of those different typefaces, the thousands of typefaces you have available as part of your Creative Cloud membership. And if you see one you like, then you can activate it right then and there, and there's no more 100 font activation limit. You can activate as many as you want. It's syncing that one font down, what's called Adorn Engraved. It synced it down, and it looks like, I don't know what's going on with my display there, but if I want Adorn Engraved, I should have it now. Adorn. Oh no, I've lost the spelling of it too. All right, well, anyway, that should work, but I am out of time. Just so you know, it's going to drive me crazy until I find that font. But anyway, the font is there somewhere. It's something I'm doing weird on this particular text. But anyway, go check out these new features. Stay tuned if you want to continue watching here on the Facebook page for Adobe Creative Cloud. You're going to learn some new things about Adobe Creative Residence. And with that said, I am out of time. I would love to stay and do more, but we got through everything I wanted to show you and all the cool new things that I like that were introduced in 2018 for Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. Stay tuned for more today, and also join me on the InDesign channel tomorrow, the Illustrator channel on Wednesday, so forth and so on. So cheers, everybody. With that said, take care. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye, everybody.